Hi, I'm Elise Chaffins, and today I'm joined by Robert Rippberger to talk about his film Renner, coming to video on demand on March 28th. Thank you so much for taking time to talk with me today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for your interest in the film.
Absolutely. So I think that Renner is one of the most interesting takes on AI that I've seen, mostly because it really highlights that it's not actually artificial intelligence, but it's really based on the experience of the programmers. Can you just talk about like developing that kind of idea?
Yeah, I mean, I think with the future of AI, I think we're all asking ourselves what is distinctly human and what are the things that AI will be replacing us to do. And we've certainly seen it take many jobs and many walks of life in many areas. And with this film, I really wanted to explore the things that are uniquely human, that get into the sort of nuance of relationships and ultimately the dangers that lie with an over reliance and sort of over trust and faith in following technology. And so that was really the goal is to sort of distill um, what may just be a program versus what sort of has the recipe of life in it.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, in one of the scenes, Renner makes a really like pointed comment about analog art and
Mhm.
everything. Can you kind of like share your own thoughts on that, as especially as you said, as AI kind of becomes more prominent in art and filmmaking?
Yeah, I think the big thing that comes down to it is like robots can't necessarily care.
Mhm.
They can emulate it, but that sort of care and just process. For example, there's so many animated films that are done by hand
Mhm.
versus something that's just kind of whipped up by a computer, and the computer can be really visually striking. I think so often we're surprised at how much animated films look like real life. Um, but that sort of level of detail and that sort of uh, individual style that's not just in one image, but through a whole film, I think that really comes through and really speaks to people. Much like why so many great filmmakers are going back to practical effects. It's like that speaks through um, more than what you could whip up with visual effects or CG, just because what sort of gives then if everything is possible, what has meaning after that?
Yeah, yeah. I think one of the things that's also interesting is that you're able to tell us a lot about the character Renner with a really simple set. Can you talk about your ideas for the design of like Renner's apartment and the hallway, and then how those were contrasted with like Jamie and Chad's apartment?
Sure. It's a great question. Obviously the whole set is such a core piece, and it's really we always thought of it as like another character in the movie.
Hmm.
And when the script came, that world didn't exist in it. But just immediately, I knew that we had to be in a place that was deeply cinematic. There's so many scenes in these little areas that we had to have as much kind of infused into it. And that there is something somewhat futuristic, but also we don't really know where in time we are.
Hmm.
Um, and so that was the idea of really when I read the script, I first saw the city of Guangzhou, China in my head. And it's a place I had visited before. And it was kind of like nothing I had seen in a movie, had elements of sort of Blade Runner and Tron, but had this different quality to it that I really wanted to bring out and, not to emulate other looks and feels of movies, but really sort of do homage to that city. And and the rest, was really working with my production designer, Sonia Foltars, who is just phenomenal when it comes to bringing visions to life. And she had so many great ideas along the way that, yeah, ultimately we were really pleased with what we ended up with.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it really tells a lot about who the character is,
Mm.
and it does just a really great job of showing kind of the contrast, especially when you go to like Jamie and Chad's apartment, that difference there. So yeah, I think that's really interesting. Um, there is a pretty significant twist in this movie. Can you just talk about how you successfully pull off a twist like this.
Yeah, it's always a balance because there's not just a twist, but also a little bit of a potential genre twist. And
Yeah.
so, it was really important um, that it doesn't feel like it veers in a completely wrong direction. And Frankie had a lot with that is really showing, that he is capable of violence. That, he may be kind of holding on by a loose thread. And further, just always kind of having little moments that are off. But the hard thing is not letting the audience get ahead of you, and so we worked a lot with that in the edit, with my editor Gabe Colin, and um, yeah, a tricky balance considering so few cast, but that was one of the main things we were kind of building through, and really you want to have this spectacular ending and climax that people didn't necessarily see coming, and at the same time is kind of a has something to say about the role of these technologies in our lives more and more.
Yeah, absolutely. And you kind of mentioned Frankie Muniz's like performance in this, and he really like carries so much of the way the movie kind of flows. Can you just talk about working with him and, the way that you collaborated in like creating that character?
Yeah. Frankie himself is very analytical and very smart, and so I think before he's always played different characters, but through this one, I really tried to build with him through himself his connection to Renner. And I think that sort of electrified the whole experience and set. And, there were so many moments where he was just so engaged. And I think it really comes through in the performance. And at the end, he said, this is one of the proudest, this is the proudest I've ever been on my performance in a film. And he's been in a lot and worked with hundreds of directors, and that was quite a nice compliment. But also just a testament of how much he committed and threw himself into the part, and it's very vulnerable being an actor, and so yeah, really was appreciative of him and his trust, and think that audiences will definitely see a Frankie that will surprise them.
Yeah, absolutely. It is not Malcolm anymore in this for sure. Yeah. Well, thank you again for your time today. I really appreciate it. Best of luck with the film and its move into video on demand. And yeah, thank you for your time.
Well, thank you.
Absolutely. Have a great day.
Cheers.